Tonight on NewsCenter, no more dragging feet, a message from the South Korean president to her Japanese counterpart. It's high time to make a decision on Tokyo's wartime sexual slavery system. On North Korea, she's open to meet with its leader on one condition. Historic majority. Aung San Suu Kyi's party wins a historic supermajority in Myanmar's parliament. That means her party, the NLD, will choose the country's next president. And a quick approval of the budget bill can boost the nation's 2016 economic growth by a significant amount, says Korea's top economic policymaker. It's Friday, November 13, 2015. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. I'm Moon Conn-young. President Park says it's high time that Japan made a decision on resolving the issue of the systematic enslavement of women for sexual service in its Imperial Army leading up to and during World War II. Now, this in written answers to questions submitted by local and international news agencies today. On North Korea, the South Korean leader said there is no reason not to hold an inter-Korean summit if a breakthrough comes in solving the North Korean nuclear issue. Arirang News top office correspondent Hwang Sang-hee breaks down what President Park had to say.
On Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women, President Park called for a resolution that can heal the wounds of the past. She expressed hope for concrete progress on the issue, saying Japan is going against international sentiment by dragging the issue out without admitting its wrongdoing. President Park and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe agreed to speed up negotiations on the so-called comfort women issue at their first face-to-face summit in Seoul earlier this month. With both leaders attending a string of multilateral summits starting this weekend, President Park's 10-day tour could provide her with an opportunity to continue talks with Abe. On inter-Korean relations, President Park said she is open to talks at the highest level. This under the condition that there is progress in regards to North Korea's denuclearization and inter-Korean ties. For now, she said the Koreas must work on building trust step by step. On the upcoming G20, APEC, and ASEAN Plus 3 summits, President Park said the leaders will focus on securing inclusive and continued growth. She said South Korea will actively take part in discussions on the Korea-Japan-China Free Trade Agreement and the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Deal at the APEC summit. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
President Park's direct call on Japanese Prime Minister to make decision on how to properly address the victims of the Japanese Army's wartime sexual slavery system is an unprecedented move by the South Korean leader. What is behind the president's remarks and what led her to make such bold statement? Our Kim Ji-yeon has an analysis.
For the first time in 3.5 years, President Park Geun-hye directly called for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to resolve the issue of sexual enslavement of women during World War II, a thorny issue that plays a large part as to why Seoul-Tokyo relations remain frayed. In a joint written interview with members of the Organization of Asia-Pacific News Agencies on Friday, President Park tried to garner international consensus on the so-called comfort women issue, saying it concerns universal women's rights, and that settling the matter would greatly elevate the status of women worldwide. These remarks are believed to be geared toward motivating Japan to make a palpable move to resolve the issue, as meager progress have been made even after 10 rounds of working-level talks between the two countries.
The Korean government thinks Japan is not doing much in proposing a counter-concession plan, and this is what prompted President Park to stress it directly this time. Seoul wants to resolve the comfort women issues through working-level talks, while Tokyo wants to discuss various other issues such as Korea's import regulations on Japan's fisheries and marine products and the prosecution of Seoul branch manager of Japan-based Sankei Shimbun.
The expert added that Seoul suggested discussing the issue through a higher vice ministerial level talks, but Tokyo has so far declined to reply to Seoul's request, adding weight to the criticism that Japan is refusing to atone for its past wrongdoings. Tokyo argues the comfort women issue has already been resolved through a treaty signed in 1965 that settled all reparations. Seoul, on the other hand, maintains that the treaty did not cover the matter of military sex slaves and demands a formal apology and compensation from the Japanese government for the victims. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's rival political camps have failed to reach a deal on redrawing the country's electoral map ahead of next year's general elections. We are joined by our parliamentary correspondent Park Ji-won for more. Ji-won, today was the legal deadline for submitting the plan.
That's right, Conn-young. Korea's National Assembly Act stipulates that redistricting constituency boundaries be completed 5 months prior to elections. Considering that general elections will be held April 13th next year, the redistricting plan should have been agreed by Friday. However, with a series of bipartisan negotiations failing to result in progress this week, both parties agreed to discuss the matter for another month in the hopes of narrowing their differences by mid-December. It has become an urgent political matter as the Constitutional Court ordered late last year that the electoral map be withdrawn to realize a more fair representation of the population in each district. As a result, sparsely populated rural areas will lose some constituencies, while more densely populated urban areas are set to gain. And ruling and main opposition party lawmakers representing rural areas have been united in their protests of the negotiations.
None of our demands have been met. This is a betrayal of our rural population's representation and sovereignty, which should be preserved.
The ruling Saenuri Party wants a reduction of the current 54 proportional seats while maintaining 300 seats in parliament in order to minimize cuts to the number of rural constituencies.
Every 4 years, at some point in electoral map negotiations, rival parties reach an impasse. So we need to expedite talks centering on points that we can agree on.
But the main opposition, NPAD, wants to maintain the number of proportional representation members. The Liberal Party also wants to introduce region-based proportional representatives, determined by the total number of votes received in each region.
The Saenuri Party would benefit the most from the increase in number of local constituencies, so we proposed a region-based proportional representation system to prevent damage to the proportional principle of the Assembly, but it was rejected as well.
With each pursuing redistricting plans to benefit their own political interests, it remains to be seen whether another month of negotiations can bridge differences between the two parties. Conn-young?
Thank you, Ji-won. Our parliamentary correspondent Park Ji-won for us from the National Assembly. As political wrangling continues at the National Assembly, at risk is the passage of the nation's 2016 budget plan. Seoul's finance minister on this Friday called on lawmakers to come together on the budget plan, stressing that it is absolutely critical that the deadline for budget approval is met. Arirang's economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hae has the details.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-wan says if the budget plan for next year passes at the National Assembly, the country's growth rate will be boosted by 0.7 percentage points in 2016. The minister adds the plan, worth over $300 billion is crucial in improving the people's livelihoods and revving up momentum for recovery.
In order for the 2016 budget plan to play its part in creating jobs for the youth and revitalizing the economy, I ask lawmakers again to pass the plan by the set deadline.
By law, the budget must be approved by December 2nd, but lawmakers have a poor history of missing deadlines. The current 19th session of the National Assembly that kicked off in 2012 failed to result in the passage of the budget plan by the set date for back-to-back years in 2012 and 2013. Finance Minister Choi also asked for lawmakers' cooperation in other sectors, saying such efforts will help the economy continue the recovery momentum seen in the third quarter.
During this General Assembly, key labor reform bills and economic revitalization plans should be passed as soon as possible, as well as the ratification of the free trade agreement between Korea and China.
Taking into account such measures, the government expects the Korean economy to expand 3.3% next year, up from this year's forecast of 3.1%. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
The third test run of the Redrawing project will be carried out next week, but with negotiations still ongoing, the project most likely will not kick off before next year. Our Kwon So-ah has the latest on this venture that involves trade between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Moscow.
120,000 tons of Russian coal and Chinese drinking water worth 10 containers will be transported from North Korea to South Korea next week in a pilot run of the trilateral trade project between the two Koreas and Russia. In what will be the third test since November 2014 of the so-called Najin-Hasan project, two 45,000-ton bulk carriers and a container ship will travel from North Korea's port city of Najin to South Korea's port cities of Pohang and Busan. This after being transported via a 54-kilometer cross-border railway between Russia's border town of Hasan and Najin. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Friday that South Korea's largest steelmaker POSCO, train operator Korail, and Hyundai Merchant Marine will run the pilot from the 17th to 30th, and that along with them, government officials and Russian railway authorities will make a visit to North Korea for on-site inspections from the 17th to 20th. The project's main aim is to benefit all three countries economically, but is also seen as a way to boost inter-Korean ties, as the project is seen as an exception to the May 24 economic sanctions imposed on Pyongyang after the sinking of a South Korean naval vessel in 2010. It remains to be seen when the project will kick off. As the Unification Ministry said, negotiations will take longer than previously expected, meaning chances are high the route won't be officially operational before early next year. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The U.S. government says has admitted to flying two strategic bombers close to China's reclaimed islands in the South China Sea. The Pentagon says the B-52s were contacted by Chinese air traffic control but continue to fly their missions as directed. Connie Kim reports.
In a move that could further inflame tension between Washington and Beijing, it has emerged the Pentagon flew two B-52 bombers near China's artificial islands in the South China Sea earlier this week. Pentagon spokesman Bill Urban said Thursday that the B-52s were on a routine mission in the South China Sea, taking off from and returning to Guam, but did not go within 12 nautical miles of the islands. 12 nautical miles around a territory is internationally recognized as sovereign territory, but the U.S. does not recognize China's claim to the artificial islands. Tension escalated late last month after an American destroyer challenged territorial limits around one of China's man-made islands in the Spratlys. The Spratlys are a disputed group of more than 750 reefs, islets, atolls, cays, and islands claimed by China and four other countries, including Vietnam and the Philippines. The U.S. says the patrols are within its rights under freedom of navigation. But Beijing has so far held firm to its stance, saying it'll never allow any country to violate its territorial waters and airspace in the area. The latest patrol comes days before U.S. President Barack Obama's trip to Manila for the APEC summit. There, Obama is expected to voice Washington's commitment to freedom of navigation and overflight in the area. Chinese President Xi Jinping will also attend the APEC talks. The White House says no decision has been made on whether to put the South China Sea issue on the formal agenda. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Duty-free battle heats up in this country. The future of four vital downtown duty-free licenses, 3 in Seoul and 1 down in the southern port city of Busan, will be decided tomorrow. That decisions have the ability to reshape Korea's lucrative travel retail landscape. On the eve of Decision Day, we turn to our Kim Min-ji.
Who will it be? Korea's customs agency says it will announce the recipients of duty-free operating licenses on Saturday after a strict closed-door evaluation over the next 2 days. Four conglomerates, Lotte Group, SK Group, Shinsegae, and Doosan Group, are vying to be granted licenses to operate duty-free stores in 3 locations in Seoul, set to expire this year. 2 companies, retail giant Shinsegae and fashion group Hyungji, are competing for 1 location in Korea's southern port city of Busan. On the first day, the panel will review documents submitted by the companies before presentations by the competitors the following day. The companies will be assessed on various factors such as management capabilities, financial soundness, and contribution to society. There has been intense competition for duty-free licenses in Korea as the business has become a huge source of profit. In 2014, 6 duty-free stores in Seoul posted combined sales of nearly $4 billion. And the competitors are all eager to get in on the action.
We will do our best to become the Samsung Electronics of the service sector.
Is there a duty-free shop like Dongdaemun which can be pivotal to Korean tourism? Not currently.
We will work on attracting 20 million tourists to Seoul by 2020.
We are the best in Korea when it comes to global fashion content.
However, some critics say the heated competition raises eyebrows as it could result in unrealistic pledges and targets, insisting that companies should be more focused on providing differentiated strategies for global competitiveness. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
It may be safe to say that having those instant noodles, or ramen as it's called in Korean, is a whole culture of its own here in this country. Well, Koreans' love for these noodles continues so much that this country has won the #1 spot in the number of consumers of those quick fix meals for the 2nd straight year. Although it may not be considered the healthiest of meals, efforts are underway to create a more wholesome image. Our Lee Ji-won reports.
I enjoy eating ramen. I have it at least once a week.
We eat ramen often, especially my son. He eats it about 3 times a week.
Ramen is one of Korea's most popular foods. According to latest statistics, each Korean consumed an average of 76 packs last year. This means roughly 1 instant noodle meal a week. Koreans' ramen consumption far exceeded that of other countries worldwide. This despite a culture preoccupied with looking and eating healthy.
Ramyun is high in sodium. 1 serving of ramyun exceeds the daily recommended sodium intake level. High consumption of sodium can lead to disorders like high blood pressure, diabetes, hardening of arteries, and kidney disease.
To mitigate such health hazards, various efforts are being made to promote healthier ramen eating habits. Companies are offering versions containing more dehydrated vegetables, reducing fat content, and using non-fried noodles. Experts have recommended boiling the noodles and replacing the water before adding flavoring and other ingredients. This process is believed to reduce the oil content from the fried noodles. Another recommendation is to use only 70% of the soup base to decrease the sodium levels. For a creative, healthy touch, adding all kinds of fresh ingredients, green onions, bean sprouts, and even mushrooms, is widely practiced in many households. According to health experts, fresh vegetables also help remove excess sodium in the body. This Korean practice may even spread to other cultures soon. By going a little out of the way or getting creative, Koreans are finding ways to make an empty calorie meal a little healthy while savoring it. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, the Milan Expo attracted some 20 million visitors from around the world during its latest run, and attracting the palates of many different nationalities were Korea's signature dishes. Well, so much so that experts believe the long-term economic benefits could amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
Italians are known for their hearty dishes with plenty of olive oil, tomatoes and mixed herbs. But in Milan, the country's bustling fashion capital, more and more people are enjoying Korean cuisine. From May to October, Korea showcased its signature dishes at this year's Milan Expo and was among the 145 countries that participated under the theme, Feeding the Planet, Energy for Life. During the 6-month exposition, the Korea Pavilion welcomed roughly 2.3 million guests, eager to explore Korean gastronomy. And around 190,000 have visited the restaurant inside the pavilion to taste the country's best dishes such as bibimbap. a spicy mix of rice, meat and vegetables, and japchae, stir-fried sweet potato noodles with strips of lean meat and vegetables flavoured with soy sauce.
I chose to try japchae because it's similar to pasta. I like it because the flavour isn't strong, but it's slightly spicy.
The restaurant has generated sales revenue of over $3.7 million. And industry experts say the Korea Pavilion will continue to make substantial economic impact in the next 10 years, worth over $430 million.
The economic benefits will amount to around $440 million, but the cultural impact of tourism, the arts, tradition and history will be much more substantial.
In fact, the Milan Expo has not only attracted food lovers, it's boosted Korea's image. After dropping by the pavilion, the number of people expressing interest in purchasing Korean products doubled to 75%, while those interested in visiting Korea also doubled to 77%. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A special part.
You intend the
Founding of its ruling workers.
camera filming me, although following the meet
Finalized the cabinet events.
same title. I broke to island. During the 1 week
Korea is one of the most homogeneous societies in the world, and for centuries, the Korean people have taken pride in their ethnic homogeneity. But as a Seoulite in 2015 today, I can tell you from personal experience that this society is becoming more diverse by the day. I have official figures to back my argument. The number of expats in Korea has topped 1.8 million as of this year, and more foreign tourists are choosing this country as their vacation destination. But are there enough materials for foreigners to learn about Korea? No, not Korea's traditional dish bibimbap, traditional attire hanbok, or those pretty boy bands or gorgeous girl groups, but the real Korea today. Well, here is one expat who has taken the initiative to do just that. In person with me in the studio is Dr. Benjamin Giorno. Dr. Giorno is a cultural anthropologist from France and the author of Sketches of Korea. Dr. Giorno, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good evening.
Well, let's kick things off with this initiative that you took, this book. It's essentially a guide, a foreigner's guide to Korean culture. Now, I think just a short trip to the nearest bookstore would tell us that there are many, many books of such kind. So what inspired you to write a book yourself?
Yes, indeed. There are many books about Korea, but I think that what we experienced with my friend Elodie, who is the co-writer, author of the book, is that there was a need for a different kind of book. First, we wanted to do a practical guide for Korean culture for foreigners, but a practical guide which should reflect what Korea is really, and not what Korea should be, because many of the books that we already knew were mostly made by institutions who want to promote Korea, and most of the time they promote images which are more like cliché or stereotypes, and we wanted to go beyond that and propose a book about what you can find when you arrive in Korea, in the streets, as well as in the museums or in a Buddhist temple. So all these images, which are images from the past, as well as images from today. So that's what we wanted to have, something more realistic in a way. More realistic, definitely. That's, I think, what definitely need that. Well, having lived in Korea for more than 20 years, 21 years to be exact, right? You know, that's longer than I've lived here in Korea. What are some very important or interesting points unique to Korea or Koreans that you would like to convey to non-Koreans? Well, I think that for me, it's difficult to express, of course, after so many years in Korea. But I would say that what is really unique is the mindset. Of course, Korea has its own culture, but I think the mentalities are really different. Well, speaking of fun and culture, you know, food and cuisine is such a huge part of culture, and I know that you are very involved and interested in Korean cuisine as well as French cuisine. Do you feel that the Korean cuisines reflect a unique Koreanness of its own? Yes, I think that the beauty of Korean cuisine is that it reflects the roots of Korea, which is rural environment, rural society, traditional rural society. And I think the real Korean cuisine for me is that cucina povera, as we say in Italian, that cuisine of the everyday humble people that you find in the countryside. And that's the beauty of Korean cuisine, because it reflects the land, the climate, everything. And I think that nowadays with the Hallyu, the Korean wave, that traditional cuisine has been very much challenged, because now Korean cuisine has to be on every plate all over the world and has to compete with so many different and beautiful cuisine. And I've seen recently that Korean cuisine has tried to be what it is not, I think, sometimes. And I hope it won't lose its soul and spirit when trying to be, globalized and commercialized too much.
Right, so staying true to the spirit of Korea, the actual soul, like you said, of Koreanness in Korean cuisine.
Exactly.
All right, so what is your plan from hereafter? Do you have any other projects in the works?
Of course, always a lot of projects, mostly about books and publishing books and essays about Korea. So I'm working on a book now, which is going to be published in France very soon, a collective work about cities in Korea, and also preparing other stuff, books about Korean cinema and Korean society seen through Korean movies. That's what I'm preparing for next year.
Oh, one more question. So are French people interested in Korea? And for instance, will they be interested in this book on Korean cities?
Yes, I think so. Nowadays, we have a lot of interest in France. There are many good indicators, like a lot of new Korean language and culture departments at universities. Now we are celebrating the 130th anniversary of the French-Korean relationship for 1.5 years. So it's a big event on both sides. And now it's in France, and we have a lot of events. So yes, French people are interested in Korea. And that's why our book, Sketches of Korea, is going to be published soon in French.
Well, I can see that you can play as a very strong link between Korea and France and the Korean culture and the French culture. Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin Giorno, for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you again here.
Thank you very much.
The people of Myanmar say they're hopeful for change now that the country's opposition has won a majority in parliament. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Now, Bruce, this victory ends decades of military rule in Myanmar and invalidates Aung San Suu Kyi's immense struggle for freedom there.
Hello, Conn-young. The military had sole control of Myanmar for 50 years, and it wasn't until 2011 that President Thein Sein took over and economic and democratic reforms began taking shape. Now that Suu Kyi's National Liberation for Democracy Party is taking control, there's a much better chance those reforms take root over the long term. And with its majority in parliament, the NLD can elect the country's next president as well. The only other time Myanmar held a national election was in 1990. Suu Kyi's NLD was widely considered to have won that election, but military rulers threw out the results and placed Suu Kyi and many of her colleagues under arrest.
Now, 25 years later, Aung San Suu Kyi finally has a seat in parliament, but the constitution there bans her from being the next president. Why is that?
The constitution was written by the military, and it bans anyone with foreign family members from becoming president. Suu Kyi's late husband was British, and her children hold British passports. On top of that, her party can't amend the constitution because it includes an effective measure to prevent just that. When the ruling party, the military, wrote the Constitution, it gave itself 25% of seats in Parliament. So even with a majority, Suu Kyi's NLD doesn't have the power to push through any amendments. Suu Kyi's known that all along, and she's revered by her party, so the NLD's likely going to put forth a candidate the party agrees on. She indicated they'll choose a civilian, saying that's appropriate. A top NLD leader said Suu Kyi could become someone like Sonia Gandhi. Gandhi's the widow of late Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Ms. Gandhi's led the Congress Party, and with that authority, she dominated the government of former Prime Minister Mohammed Singh.
Right, Bruce, there's been concerns that the elections this time around weren't as free and fair as promoted. What is the view of the world and the rest of the world on the process of this election?
Well, ahead of the elections, a UN investigator questioned their legitimacy because dozens of candidates had been disqualified and hundreds of thousands of people denied voting rights. That investigator also said restrictions under military rule could put elections at risk. He was talking about restrictions on freedom of expression, assembly, and association, as well as excessive force against protesters, things the country has seen for sure under the military. But the U.S. and many other Western countries are praising Myanmar President Thein Sein. U.S. President Barack Obama reportedly called and commended him for holding free and fair elections.
Let's talk about the immediate period right after the elections. What needs to happen in order for a smooth transition to take place in that country?
For that to happen, the military is going to have to accept the results of this election. And so far, it looks like they're willing to do that. They've agreed to talk to Aung San Suu Kyi about transitioning power. The army is still a formidable force in Myanmar's government, and the commander-in-chief nominates heads of three powerful, budget-heavy ministries. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has cautioned that what happens next is key to Myanmar's future. He said a peaceful post-election period is crucial for stability and maintaining the confidence of the people and the credibility of the elections.
Well, so many people have put their faith in Aung San Suu Kyi, and now she finally has the chance to lead.
Yeah, one example of that is ethnic minorities in Myanmar. They really hope that now that the NLD is going to take over, it will quell some of the racial violence that has been persistent in that country.
Right. This must be a celebration of a long kind in Myanmar, because this democracy comes after a long 53 years.
A long, iron-fisted military rule, and everyone's just watching to see what happens next and how that transition takes place.
Right. We will all keep an eye on that country. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for today. We will see you on Monday.
Thanks, Conn-young. See you then.
Well, here in Seoul, it practically rained the whole day on this Friday, dropping temperatures a couple of notches. Let's check in with Jihyun at the Weather Center to see if we'll have good weather over the weekend. Jihyun.
Hello there, Conn-young. Yes, it did rain all day long, and it's raining here in the capital, with precipitation forecast to continue until tomorrow morning.
So can we expect the rain to be followed by clean air at least?
Definitely, we'll enjoy cleaner air after the rain, along with some cloudy skies with a bit of sunny the late afternoon tomorrow. And nice weather is on tap for Sunday, but toxic smog from China could be hitting the north-central region on Sunday night. So please do keep that in mind. And let's move on to tomorrow's temperature readings. Daily high here in the capital will hike up to 15. Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 17 and 18, while Busan tops out at 19. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 17 and 19, while Dokdo rises to 17. Now, there should not be a big drop in temperatures after this band of rain, but as we can see, frequent rain is in the forecast for next week, and that's going to bring some cold conditions to the whole peninsula. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Friday, the 13th. Stay safe, stay warm. I'm Moon Conn-young. Thank you all for watching. We hope to see you right back here, same time on Monday on NewsCenter.